But in terms of the price behavior right now, I would say it's just a fear of uncertainty. It's not necessarily about Bitcoin. I don't see anything fixing the state of the financial system right now. I think the only way out of it is to switch to Bitcoin, to rebase to Bitcoin, and phase out the old system as gradually as possible.
What if the United States just fired the starting gun on global Bitcoin adoption without most people even noticing? Samson Mow believes that's exactly what's happening. While the world is distracted by headlines, economic uncertainty, and political theater, a quiet but historic shift is underway. The US has just carved out a strategic Bitcoin reserve, separating it from every other crypto asset. And according to Samson, that move could signal the beginning of the end for fiat dominance. In this video, we dive into Mow's latest insights on nation-state Bitcoin adoption, why the information gap is wider than ever, and how the market is completely underestimating what comes next. Subscribe now so you don't miss the moments that matter, because as Samson says, most people don't know yet.
Are we just that early where people aren't paying attention?
It's a lot of things, and I like to say there's like a crosswalk test you can do. Next time you're stopped at a red light, just look at who's crossing the street and just think, do they know? And the answer is probably they don't know. And you can also test it at the coffee shop when you go get a coffee. Just ask the barista, did you know about the SBR and the plans to buy Bitcoin? And the answer is probably no, right? And then from there, you can even ask more basic questions like, do you know there's only 21 million? And, you know, there is a huge information gap here that we have that the rest of the market doesn't have. But in terms of the price behavior right now, I would say it's just a fear of uncertainty. It's not necessarily about Bitcoin. We are correlated sometimes with the traditional markets, and it can be frustrating, but we always break from it. You know, we correlate for a while and then we break. That's why we're at, 80,000 today and not at whatever the S&P is at, right? We do go up against against everything. But right now there's a lot of fear about tariffs, one. Two, it's just what is going to happen next, because the Trump administration, they're moving very quickly and they're just seemingly, trying to fix things in a very rough manner, right? And then there is three, the effort to lower interest rates on 10-year T-bills, and that's really just trashing the stock market, right? To make people invest in bonds. So there's just so much at play in terms of the macroeconomic, securities landscape alone, that I think that's bringing us down with it. And you compound that by the fact that people don't fully understand that Bitcoin is the safe haven, and you can kind of see this price stagnation.
It makes sense. On the point of kind of the potential purposeful tanking of the stock market, trying to, basically create conditions that drive people towards bonds. Do you think that's a very purposeful strategy? Are they realizing that basically something's got to give? And so it's like, okay, have some short-term pain in the stock market, throw out all these different announcements, try to, push market sentiment down, and then maybe blame that on the last administration because we're still obviously very early. And then once things start, rocking and rolling again, interest rates start dropping, liquidity starts getting injected, then it's like, okay, now it's a party. Is that kind of what you think is happening right now?
Well, that is what people are theorizing, right? And there are little hints of that from what the Trump admin is saying, but I don't really know if that is the game plan. It might be that we're ascribing strategy to where there is no strategy, or where there's a rough strategy and we're ascribing 5D chess to it. But I don't think it helps in the end. Like it's like inflating balloons, not like heavy duty industrial balloons, but like party balloons with helium, the ones that are like red and blue and yellow, under the Titanic as it's sinking. I don't see anything fixing the state of the financial system right now, just because there's been so much printing. Like you can lower the 10-year interest rate, but to what end, right? It's going to come back later. And you see this in the yen too. There were a number of interventions last year, and what did those interventions accomplish? Not that much, right? It went down and then it went back up to 150 to the dollar. So I just don't see it helping. Even the Department of Government Efficiency, I don't see that helping either. You're cost cutting, but the fact is you're sitting on $36 trillion of debt. Letting it roll over at a lower interest rate doesn't really help much in the long run because you're missing something. And I think the only way out of it is to switch to Bitcoin, to rebase to Bitcoin, and phase out the old system as gradually as possible.
What would that look like, rebasing to Bitcoin? Are you suggesting an actual like a full backing, so not just a strategic reserve, but actually, tying it similar to how gold was pre-1971?
Yeah, basically, rebasing is saying you can redeem $1 for 1 Satoshi, and that's it. I mean, you already can do that with gold, right? Like, you just have to make that further jump forward that Bitcoin is digital gold, and I can now peg the dollar to Bitcoin too, right? So I think that's ultimately where we're going, but to make it palatable, I believe there have to be shorter, smaller steps taken, like the executive order that says we're creating the reserve, but in a budget neutral manner. Because right now everyone's freaking out about the economy and government spending. It's not very good if they say we're going to go and spend Bitcoin and spend money and buy Bitcoin. And then you create the actual strategic reserve, which means you have to have congressional approval. And we're seeing that. Like Cynthia Lummis presented at the Bitcoin for America event, and you have bipartisan support. So we're seeing that it could come to pass, but it does need congressional approval, which is sort of a litmus test for broader public approval. So if that does happen, then the U.S. will start to buy in serious amounts. And I think once you have a serious amount of Bitcoin, then you can, well, not a Bitcoiner, we would say rebase right away. But as a politician that has to deal with normal people, you can say, okay, now we have a war chest of Bitcoin, and we'll allow you to redeem against it at a certain rate.
Do you view this moment with the executive order, at least, like, yes, it's somewhat limited in its scope in terms of, as you correctly said, it has to be budget neutral acquisition, but saying, look, we're not going to dispose of any of it. We're not going to sell any of it. The digital asset stockpile gets a different treatment. Nothing is added to it. They can dispose of it. But for the Bitcoin one, I mean, does this mark sort of like a starting gun moment, an inflection point moment where, I mean, this is the United States of America. Like, it is one of the biggest superpower in the world. It's the biggest kid at the playground. Is this what kind of tips off everyone else that we really need to stop ignoring this? Like, maybe we're not fully going down that path yet, but we need to pay attention because something's clearly going on here. Like, what's Trump doing? Is this that moment?
I think for some yes, and for some no. So it's a mixed bag. Again, like a lot of politicians and presidents, they don't really know yet. And again, what they don't know is compounded by the fact that they don't know what the implications are. And then you have some that probably clue in and say, okay, this is a big change. But if you're measuring general sentiment on X, I think it's also divided too. Like, there are people outspoken that say it's a nothing burger, it doesn't change anything. And then you have people in my camp, or in your camp maybe, that say, yeah, it changes everything because it really is that starting gun. It's not like we're going to buy 1 million Bitcoin tomorrow, but this opens the door to that. And I think a lot of people kind of expect it's going to happen at the snap of your finger, that it all happens at once, but that's really not the case. You have to have a progress of steps that you go that lead people down that path, and this is that starting gun that begins that whole process.
From just in your opinion, you've obviously thought about nation state adoption a lot. This is what JAN3 is doing, is trying to accelerate hyperbitcoinization through nation state adoption, and also through bottom up approaches like Aqua, your wallet, which I'd love to get into a bit later. But from your perspective, was this executive order, like, were you happy with the way it was structured? Did you look at this and say, like, pleasantly surprised, disappointed? What was your kind of just gut reaction to it when it came out?
I was very happy. Like, my take is that we got exactly what we wanted and also what was promised, right? So we have two buckets. You have the strategic Bitcoin reserve and then the crypto stockpile. And as you said, it's not to be added to, but to be sold off potentially. So there's not much more we can ask for, right? There is a clear separation between Bitcoin and everything else. And also there's now the, what is it, the Genius Act, the stablecoin regulations that are coming that will further structure how the market views these different buckets and deals with them. But, you know, we were at the point where we thought we were going to get a crypto reserve. And I actually spent some time thinking about, you know, if Trump wanted a crypto reserve, how could we structure the rules in a way that we don't get a bucket of garbage? And what I came down to was it has to be proof of work. And with additional requirements like, you know, dominance and hashing function, time existing, and a number of other factors. But that was the best I could do to create some structure whereby you wouldn't have Ripple and a million meme coins in a crypto reserve. But, you know, it's better that we just said it's Bitcoin and then everything else, because that is the holy grail of nation state adoption, that it's Bitcoin only.